Happy Hump Day. Welcome in. Wednesday, March 12th is the day, and this is Daily Faceoff live, streaming live on the Daily Faceoff YouTube and brought to you by Bet365. Download the app today. Use the promo code NATION. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. And I like the spirit from our boy J-Rock in the YouTube. What's up, chat? We need participation and likes today. No passengers in this chat. I agree with that. Drop in your Ask DFO questions.
All gas, no brakes. Let's go.
Yeah, giddy up. We're going to have Jon Goyens join us in a little bit for the coaches room. Excited to have him back. But first, Frank, let's talk a little bit about this Eastern playoff race and how things are shaping up. We talked yesterday about how massive some of these 4-point swing games are going to be. Ottawa got a big win over Detroit earlier. And then yesterday, Columbus had an opportunity to pull right within the New Jersey Devils for that third spot in the Metro. But it's New Jersey coming away with a big victory. They've won 2 in a row, and it feels like a pretty significant missed opportunity for the Blue Jackets if they wanted to get up and out of that wild card position.
Yeah, and look, that's kind of been the way that this season has gone in some ways for the Blue Jackets. As impressive as it's been that they've hung around quite obviously and are in the race, squarely in the race, in a position to add at the trade deadline, which is amazing enough. They've just been missing that kind of next gear to flip it and go a step further. And so the Devils cling to that third spot in the Metro, and it kind of reinforces the thought process that I've had, which has been, well, the biggest winner from the trade deadline was the Washington Capitals. I mean, you watch what happened between the Carolina Hurricanes losing Mikko Rantanen, the New Jersey Devils being without Jack Hughes for the remainder of the season, Dougie Hamilton's absence, and you go, could this set up any more perfectly than for the Caps, who have an 11-point edge on the Florida Panthers for top spot in the East? They're going to get that 8th seed, which right now at this point in time looks like it's the Blue Jackets. But Pat, if you flip back to the wild card standings and the teams below them, look, this is crazy. I think where I draw the line, and if we're answering the question to the title of our show, which is how many teams are in the Eastern Conference playoff race, I'm out on the Detroit Red Wings. 6 losses in a row, poor trade deadline. They're in a spot where I'm going to stick a knife in them and say, you're gone. Now, does that feel like a stretch?
No, I don't think so. And again, we're going to talk about the Boston Bruins in just a second. And while you can sit there and go, well, the Wings are ahead of the Bruins in terms of points percentage right now, so can you stick a fork in one without sticking a fork in the other? And I kind of go, well, yeah, I'm looking at how they've played recently. One team's lost 6 in a row, and one team is at least showing some passion and some fight. So I think it is fair to say Detroit is done. I have very little confidence that they're going to be able to, 18 games to go. You probably need to go 13-5 to close that gap and ensure that you jump over all the teams in front of you. Yeah, I'd be more confident in Boston going on a heater than Detroit. So I think I do draw the line at that 11 spot.
Yeah, I agree. And I would say that just from a pure math basis, Columbus is on track for 90 points. The historic guarantee yourself into the playoffs is somewhere between 93 and 94 points. The Red Wings are on pace for 84. That's 84 and a half. That's not going to get it done. So you need, just again, going back to the math and the record, if they need to get to 91 points to beat the Columbus Blue Jackets, and I mean, I hate to use the word tiebreaker again for Red Wings fans after last year, but to avoid tiebreakers and get to 91 points, you're looking at a team that needs to play significantly better than it has of late. And were they capable of going on a run after their coaching change? Obviously they did, to play themselves into that spot after being in 15th place. But you might be able to make an argument the other way that they probably just exceeded expectations for that period of time and have now come back to earth.
Yeah, I think that's fair. We have Patrick in the chat. Look at the sneaky Habs. And I was one of those people, Frank, as the years gone on, I kept being like, don't worry, eventually the wheels are going to fall off. They'll lose 9 of 10 or some crazy stretch like that. It wasn't a 4-point swing, but they got another big win last night over the Vancouver Canucks. And it's kind of like, yeah, as the days go on, it's like, they're still in the mix. And it's one of those teams where like a good 7 days can put you in a great spot.
And a dagger for the Canucks, who now has set up an all-important game on a back-to-back against the Calgary Flames tonight that battle for the 8th and final spot in the West. But look, I'm not counting out the Montreal Canadiens by any stretch of the imagination. I love their deadline because I think what it did is reinforce to these players how much making the playoffs means something to Montreal. Again, to be playing meaningful games in March, you re-sign Jake Evans to a deal where he took less than the open market. You don't trade David Savard. You don't trade Yoel Armia, and you keep this group together to say, we believe in you. It's totally a different vibe than the Detroit Red Wings, which was, we're kind of nibbling around the edges. I don't really know what message would be sent from Detroit.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit more about the Boston Bruins here, Frank. Last night, watching that third period between them and the Panthers, first off, Florida goes up 2-0, and then Boston storms back. It felt like every time there was a stoppage or a whistle, it was for a goal or a fight. And I mean, it went right down to the buzzer in the sense that Sam Reinhart thought he tied the game. The goal gets waved off because of maybe a bit of an early whistle. And then right down to the buzzer with the fighting too. Nikita Zadorov and Sam Bennett were going at it with about 3 seconds remaining in that game. And before we talk about the playoff thing, I was just watching this. I'm going, can you imagine if Brad Marchand was on the ice for this? How awkward that would be.
I mean, just seeing him in morning skate twirling around a TD Garden in a Florida Panthers jersey just seemed odd in and of itself. Yeah, I can't imagine what this would have been like had Marchand been healthy and he had been in the lineup after all that went down. And look, I guess watching this, and we already knew that was the case based on the fact that they're two-time Stanley Cup finalists now and the defending champs, that he went to the right place just because he fit the persona of every part of that team. And so I even love the response that we've seen on social media. Called one of his teammates in his opening press conference a scumbag, and then the teammate follows it up with a post saying just a couple of scumbags here, a picture of the two of them. I mean, fits to a T. And the words from Paul Maurice yesterday, just talking about how he might fit in, just saying, hey, there's a lot of weird guys in there. And he said, coach included. So, to have someone like Brad Marchand with that personality, and more importantly, when you get to the playoffs, that game fit in, I think means a lot.
Yeah. Randy is in and says Boston has heart. And that's one of the reasons why I'm not writing them off yet. The other thing they might have is a goalie, Jeremy Swayman, back 2 games now where he's looked very, very good. That late in that game, he was sensational. And I'm sitting here like, okay, if Jeremy Swayman were to go on a little 10-game run, that probably means Boston's going on a little 10-game run. And it's like, I don't know, their schedule, you have a big 4-point swing coming up against Ottawa, a couple of, no easy nights in the NHL, but soft spots with games against Buffalo and San Jose next week. I'm not counting Boston out yet.
I'm not either. Look, this is the reason why I'm bullish on them being able to retool their team. Top 10 winger in the game in David Pastrnak, top 10 defenseman in the game in Charlie McAvoy, and top 10 goalie in Jeremy Swayman. If you're going to reboot things, you're way better off than a lot of teams have as, period, that are rebuilding or retooling. So they've got an opportunity and just enough talent to say, wait, you don't think that they can catch the Columbus Blue Jackets? I think they can.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's go out west, Frank. Continuing sort of like a deadline-y recap, but it feels like we've talked ad nauseum about 6 of the 8 playoff teams in the West, if you want to call it. The 2 we haven't really touched on a lot are LA and Minnesota. So maybe we'll start with the LA Kings, who've now won a sneaky 3 straight coming out of the deadline. And not only that, on points percentage, they're second in their division. I was someone who was very critical of Rob Blake's deadline, saying, how could you not go and add more scoring? It's a team that ranks in the bottom half when it comes to goals per game. But 3 in a row, you don't want to, it's not like their deadline can truly be judged on these 3 games. They'll be judged come playoff time. But do you think maybe Rob Blake just saw something in this group that maybe we're not? Like Kuzmenko's up playing on their top line.
I don't. I think it probably came down to fit. So I'll give you some background. The LA Kings were extremely interested in Mikko Rantanen. But once they found out that he was not willing to re-sign in LA and got a no, they withdrew themselves from consideration. First off, I think they were offended that Rantanen didn't want to play in LA. I mean, who doesn't want to live in California? But the other part of it being, hey, look, we want to make a splash, but we can't also just invent players on the marketplace. And so I understand why you might look at that team and say, well, couldn't they have used a Brock Besser to inject into their mix? And I get it, but it's not like Besser at this point in the season is also lighting the world on fire. So you can't manufacture players that are perfect fits for your team. You can only take a swing on what is actually out there. And so were there other things that the LA Kings got up to? I didn't hear about them, not to say that they didn't happen, but you can't also force a square peg into a round hole. So, it's easy to be critical, but who would you have liked to have seen as the fit?
I mean, maybe a Brock Besser, just again, pure scorer. That's why I said on the surface, I saw fits out there. Maybe Rob Blake saw it differently, or obviously he did.
Yeah. I mean, I could see why Brock Besser wouldn't be a fit either. So okay. I get it.
Yeah. The other team, Minnesota, relatively quiet deadline. They were pretty soft buyers getting Justin Brazeau. I guess they also got Gustav Nyquist the week earlier. But what do you make of Minnesota here? They beat the Avs last night in a shootout. And again, in that Central Division, they're now kind of the forgotten ones. They were pretty consistent through the first, call it 3-4 months of the season, and have maybe tapered off a little bit recently over the last 3-4 weeks. But what do you make of Minnie right now, Frank?
I was just going to say, I think that the last 3 or 4 weeks have sort of turned me off to the Minnesota Wild in terms of their chances to be a real threat when it comes to this year's playoffs. Will they make it? Almost guaranteed. But will they be able to make some noise? So much of that's going to depend on Kirill Kaprizov's health and where he stands relative to their lineup. I really liked the message, though, from their general manager and Bill Guerin, which was, this is not our time. There will be a time in the future when we take the big swing and we go after some of these players that are on the market. But this year in particular, for one, they didn't have the cap space because of the Kaprizov injury. And if they had any intentions on him coming back during the regular season, which they obviously do toward the end of it, that they couldn't find a way to activate him if they spent that money. So they wanted to keep that clear for their superstar player. And I understand that notion for sure. The other part of it is looking around at the rest of the deck and what's stacked against you. You've got Dallas and Colorado and these other teams that are standing in your way. If it's not your moment right now, just to go out and spend it to say that you did, I don't really know that that makes much sense. The time for the Wild is coming. It's in the very near future, starting with a Kaprizov extension this summer, followed by $14.7 million coming off of their books and the cap increase. The Wild are going to be able to spend, and they're going to be able to be aggressive, and they've kept their powder dry until then by sort of nibbling around the edges to support this team that I think has had a huge bounce back year. They're going to be a tough team to handle if everyone's healthy because of guys like Joel Eriksson-Ek, and then you add in another big body like Justin Brazeau. Like, if you look at the way the Wild and then Team USA were built, it's pretty clear that Bill Guerin has a type. And with that, you can begin to sort of plot out from here, who are some of the guys that they might be going after in the summer and beyond. And the picture becomes a little bit more clear.
Yeah. Let's move along. Play a little smoke, fire, false alarm, Frank. There were some interesting comments over the last week, both by Paul Bissonnette about Rasmus Dahlin, maybe being like, I don't know how badly I want to be in Buffalo. And I'm paraphrasing a little bit. Dahlin comes out and kind of adamantly pushes back against that. But I guess I want to ask you, not just smoke or fire on Dahlin, but smoke or fire on the idea that there could be a handful of players in Buffalo who at the end of this year go, if we're restarting, count me out.
All right, so I'm going to go false alarm on Dahlin because of all the players that we've heard talked about so far this year in Buffalo, and being in last place opens yourself up to so many of these conversations. Two guys that I did not hear in conversation at all were Rasmus Dahlin and Tage Thompson. I've heard Owen Power. I've heard, go through their roster. Obviously, JJ Peterka being on the trade board and Dylan Cousins and all these other guys definitely out there. That said, I do think that it's not just smoke, but it's fire, that there's a huge majority of this roster that's unhappy with the spot that they're in and doesn't see, more importantly, a clear direction on how they're going to get out of the mess that they're in. They're not necessarily seeing the big picture, and I can understand why people would be feeling that way. So it's a lot of things wrapped into one, not really seeing a path to be competitive. A lot of people are locked in front of you with contracts and long-term commitments. And you're saying to yourself, okay, how can I how can I get to a spot where we have a chance to win and play meaningful games? And I think it'd be weird if there weren't 18 out of 23 players that are upset with the situation there.
Yeah, that's fair. The other one I wanted to ask you about, and listen, it's kind of just been percolating over the last couple of days, and it was an Ask DFO yesterday as well that we didn't get to from Adam. But Rod Brind'Amour kind of airing dirty laundry in the media with the Rantanen thing. Then Rantanen's agent went on Sportsnet yesterday and was like, nope, he's misinformed. I don't know how to frame this as a smoke or fire. So can I just put it on a tee for you? What do you make of the war of words here?
I would say that the best way I can frame the Mikko Rantanen situation is that just about everyone in this entire entanglement is unhappy except for the Dallas Stars. A little bit unhappy, right? So the Colorado Avalanche, they have to move on from Mikko Rantanen, and they're probably not happy about that. Then you've got the Carolina Hurricanes, who we've been saying and critical of them for a while, that they don't have a game breaker. They finally go out and get one. They make their big play and push, put the franchise record contract on the table, and he slips through their hands like sand. So they're unhappy. They've got to trade their game breaker. Then you've got Mikko Rantanen, who ends up with, I know he ends up in a spot where he likes in Dallas and obviously picked, but still ends up with 8 years and $96 million. Definitely nothing to sneeze at, but probably could have gotten somewhat close to that and stayed in Colorado. So he's got a tinge of unhappiness, also having bounced to these different places in between. And the being the center of attention in it all has probably been really uncomfortable for him. So he's unhappy. And then through all of that, the Colorado Avalanche end up with Rantanen in their division. So they're unhappy even more so. They've got to stare down the Moose for the next 9 playoff runs. That's tough. What's the best way to frame the Brind'Amour situation? And I've heard people ask me this question before, which has been, is he not in lockstep with his front office? No, the answer to that is no, a complete false alarm. However, there's definitely a difference of opinion in terms of how these two sides, the Rantanen camp and the Carolina Hurricanes, view the situation. They were given permission to talk to him before the trade from Colorado to Carolina. Now, the Rantanen camp would say, and his agent Andy Scott has been unequivocal in saying that they told the Hurricanes that their focus was on remaining in Colorado. The Canes believe that they got an answer that said, if we make the trade, that yes, you would be on a relative short list of teams where he would consider signing. Which one is right? Only those two sides know. And obviously there's differences of opinion when it's he said, he said.
Yeah. Tommy's in. He says, maybe everyone should just let it go. And you know what, Tommy? I think I am also sick of the whole back and forth Rantanen thing. So I'll put the DFO Live stamp down. We're done with the Rantanen talk. On that note, let's get to our big segment for the day. It's the Coach's Room, and it's brought to you by Tim Hortons. Canada, your favorite contest is back. Roll up to win at Tim Hortons means you could win millions of amazing prizes with just the swipe of your thumb. Imagine turning your routine Tim's run into an unforgettable vacation with Sell-Off Vacations, $1,000 Rakuten cash prize, or an all-new, all-electric 2025 Volkswagen ID. Buzz, you only have till March 23rd, so download the Tim's app today. Jon Goyens, former QMJHL head coach, joins us for the Coach's Room, and today we're talking a little Edmonton Oilers, a team that's been scuffling since basically the beginning of February. Let's start offensively, though, with this Oilers team. Everyone knows McDavid and Draisaitl. They are the guys who drive a lot of the offense, but the depth scoring has kind of fallen off a little bit. What were you able to find for us during your deep dive?
Well, there was actually even a really interesting quote also, which will lead to the second video that we're going to cover, is what Chris Knobloch said. If you're not contributing offensively, you can't also be contributing to the offense of the other team. And I think that that's a huge issue right now with the Oilers, are the guys that aren't contributing offensively. And it's crazy because there's elements like their forecheck is so-so, but yet they are by far, since the Four Nations, number one in offensive zone possession time. But the problem is there is no secondary scoring. I made this kind of comment about the Canadians recently where they have a top 3 and a bottom 9. You know, if Draisaitl and McDavid are on the same line, you're almost looking at the same type of situation in Edmonton. There is no depth scoring. So what I'm looking at is they are getting to certain spots, but they just can't finish. They just can't finish. It's the old saying, you wouldn't hit water if you fell out of a boat. And that's kind of what we're seeing from the Edmonton Oilers. And I've got about 6 clips here that'll demonstrate their inability to execute, whether it be from the slot or the inner slot. We fire this up. Forecheck. Good. Look at all the space. Be more patient, right? So that's one chance. Wait, rebound. Kidding me? We still hit the post. And I get it. A guy like Connor Brown, guy works his tail off. He does a lot of good things. Here, zone entry, tip. Right here, you shouldn't miss the net. You missed the net. Fine. Rebound. Shouldn't miss the net. Don't even get a shot on net. Again, get heavy on the forecheck. That's all good. A rim release, and it takes a wacky bounce. Look at the opportunity. And still, nothing. Just buried into the middle of the pads. Now you got a 2-on-1. Ekholm's got a pretty good bomb. Look where he's going to hit Thompson, right in the blocker square. And then boom, it's up and out the other way. Here's another opportunity. Corey Perry to the middle. That's tons of space. You missed the net. Not only do you miss the net, this actually sent the Flyers on an odd-man rush going the other way. And one more time, they roll into a 1-3 run. Good pressure, good way to create 2-on-1s. And again, can't even get that puck on net. Like if you're squeezing the stick or you're not executing right there, Savoie, instead of redirecting, you might as well stop it. Might as well stop it and skate your whole body right into Urson to make sure you actually get it on net.
So if we were playing the expected goals game, and I hate to dive into analytics because I wouldn't even know how they would answer this question, but looking at all those opportunities that you just did, conservatively, would you say that the Oilers should have scored on 60% of those?
They are in the top tier of the league, like comfortably top tier of the league in expected goals for. So yes, even if you scored 50% of those chances from your depth guys, you're not going to be sitting at 15 goals at 5-on-5 since the Four Nations break. That has them 20th. And it wouldn't be so bad if they weren't 31st in goals against at 5-on-5. So the expected goals, that's the thing. If you're not executing there, what are you doing? You're in a lot of ways, you're fueling the rush going the other way. Very similar to what Chris Knobloch said. If you're not contributing offensively, you can't be contributing to their offense. And when you miss those chances the way they're missing them, it's going back the other way too quickly.
Okay, so as difficult as those clips might have been to watch for an Oiler fan, almost like a blooper reel, what's been more frustrating, I think, to the fan base has been the way that they've played defensively. Has it been all on goaltending and getting stops, or has it also been the way that this team has defended?
So the two elements are you need some stops. Like there's got to be some serious bleeping moments behind the bench at times from players and coaches where you just need a stop. And the other part is the rush defense has been awful, near the bottom of the league in all categories on rush defense. So when we fire up these clips, you're going to see the first 3 goals against, you need to stop. You just need to stop because it's either a tight game or it's an opportunity to climb back into the game, but you need to stop. There was a one that went 5-hole there. Here, get your paddle on it. You got to freeze this. Don't just stand there. It's not mini hockey in the hallway of a hotel. Put your glove on it. Here, Skinner doesn't even get to the second post. Like that's just awful. Now, we get into rush defense. This looks like a simple 3-on-3 rush. I will ask you to look at Evan Bouchard on the far side, and then let's let this clip go. Right? So we're going to let this clip go. It's 3-on-3, but everybody for Buffalo has to wait for Thompson. Now it's a 1-on-4. This isn't a threat. That shot's over 50 feet out. Terrible rebound and terrible defending. The goal scorer, Alex Tuck, literally just touched the goal line. So let's call it 190 feet. Again, 3-on-3 rush. Watch them just drift away. Like we're playing pawn hockey. Who comes out of sight, out of mind? Alex Tuck once again. The urgency to defend. Bad change at the bench, but nonetheless, it's a 1-on-4. How do you let this simple pass to Armia right down the pipe not be impeded by anybody? Watch here. Alex Killorn reads the play, Harvard-educated player. Bad pinch by a forward covering the D. Easy breakaway. Like, you got to give a shit. Here, you can't pinch against the world-class talent and brains and scanning ability of Kucherov when you have 3 guys caught deep. But you do, and you get burnt for it. Like, they're not learning. Here, 2-on-1. Why is Nurse pressuring outside dots? He's on his backhand. Instead of buying the deep partner time, he rushes. Then he leaves the guy that he went for. And then it's just tic-tac-toe. Nobody touches anyone. Nobody interrupts any passing lanes. And again, we talked about don't contribute to the other team's offense. Horrendous turnover, and it becomes a 4-on-2. Too easy to score on that backhand. And the last one is a similar situation. It's a 3-3 game. 27 minutes left to go, and you turn over the puck and virtually give up a 2-on-0. Ekholm wanted to go for a change. Their rush defense comes from poor gap, but also poor puck management.
So it's goaltending and it's defense and it's the forwards turning over pucks. So it is like a multi-pronged thing here that's killing the Oilers. Do you think it's fixable then, I guess, is my question.
It is fixable because the game isn't rocket science. If it were, there's no chance I'd be talking to you guys today. And, the reality is reload, get above pucks. Don't cheat yourself. Don't fuel the other team's offense. And at times, the game can be as simple as get it out and get it in. And right now, you've got third and fourth line guys that are overhandling the puck, as we saw in those last two clips, instead of a simple chip, play behind the other team's defenders. And until you could simplify that part, you're going to keep seeing what we're seeing right now, which is a 3-6-0 record since the Four Nations.
Yeah, and now they're passed by the LA Kings in points percentage as well. John, appreciate your time, man. Thanks for doing this.
Thanks, guys.
Daily Faceoff inbox question, hashtag askdfo. Tony is in with one. He wants to know, could Carter Yakimchuk join the Senators for the end of the season in playoffs? Frank, I know we've talked about Ryan Leonard joining the Caps. That's because he's a college player. I was always under the impression CHL players couldn't join after their season's done. Am I wrong in thinking that? Like, could Yakimchuk come from the Hitmen to the NHL? I'm putting you on the spot with a CBA-related question.
My brain is fried, but I'm pretty sure he could once the season ends.
All right. Well, there you go. There's a question in from
Would he be ready though? Is a bigger question to ask. I don't know the answer to that. I don't think so.
Yeah, almost a point per game D-man in the WHL. He's having a great season, and I'm not just saying that because our last name sounds similar. Ian wants to know any update on Kaprizov and or Eriksson Ek. That is a big thing with the Wild, Frank, is just the status of those two. I mean, it's their two biggest drivers offensively next to, or with Matt Boldy mixed in there. But any update on Kaprizov and when he could be back?
Yeah, I haven't heard one. I did hear at the Four Nations break that it would be longer than a lot of people anticipated or realized. I don't have a firm timeline, though, on what that looks like.
All right. Daily bets for the day brought to you by Bet365. Download the app. Use the promo code NATION. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. 1-1 yesterday. Senators came through, but Jake Gensel missed his shot prop by one. Tonight, just one play. And I mean, is there a combination in hockey that's better than the Flames money line in the under right now? Dustin Wolf is on fire. He's coming off a shutout over the Montreal Canadiens on the weekend. The Flames are 4-3-3 in their last 10. Not exactly great, but taking on a Canucks team that suffered a big loss last night. I like Dustin Wolf to play well and the Flames to win. So the under at 5.5. And that brings us to garbage time, Frank. Alex Ovechkin held goalless yesterday, but damn it, I'm watching the game last night and I'm yelling at him, open net, open net. This is the wrong clip. There it is. Ovi passing off on an empty net, Frank. Never thought I'd see the day, but he does it. So his teammate Alexei Protas can have his first career hat trick.
And there's some really weird symmetry between the Washington Capitals and first hat tricks in Anaheim. I read this stat. Alex Ovechkin got his first career hat trick against the Ducks in Anaheim. Tom Wilson got his first career hat trick against the Ducks in Anaheim. And now Alexei Protas gets his first hat trick against the Ducks in Anaheim. Obviously, these are spread out over like almost 3 different decades that these would be played in. And they only go there once a year. So whatever magic is happening there, the great chase lives on, obviously, but definitely impressive nonetheless.
As soon as the goalie was out, Ovi was back over the boards. It was pretty fun to watch. Again, the great chase has been a good one. Last night, a goose egg for Ovi. We'll see if he can get going. I think they have the Sharks on Saturday. I think everyone's got that penciled for not just Ovi watch, it's Ovi hat-trick watch that night. That is a wrap on today's edition of the show. Big shout out to Jon Goyens and our producer, Pat Puff. Frank and I, we're back tomorrow at noon Eastern. We'll see you then. What's up, hockey fans? If you enjoyed that video, then you're going to want to hit the subscribe button to not miss any of our content. From daily live shows with Frank Seravalli to analysis from former NHLers to exclusive interviews with some of the biggest names in the hockey world on Frankly Speaking. You're going to want to hit that subscribe button and stay up to date with everything going on in the hockey world.